Welcome to Pittsburgh Earth Days, the DIRT podcast, featuring Grant Ervin, live from the Point Park University Center for Media Innovation. Here is your host, Grant Ervin.
Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the latest episode of the DIRT podcast, where we're bringing you the dirt on green technology, innovation, and sustainability. I'm your host, Grant Ervin, the Chief Resilience Officer for the city of Pittsburgh. Today we're talking with the amazing Justine Russo. Justine is the Director of Sustainability and Business Intelligence for PITT OHIO, where she leads their award-winning sustainability programs. She's also on the board of directors at Sustainable Pittsburgh. We'll be discussing initiatives in green energy and the role of social justice and diversity and how they play in sustainability. So thanks for joining us. And Justine, we're so happy that you're here with us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is exciting.
It's so good to see you. So welcome everyone here to the Center for Media Innovation at Point Park University for another episode here of the DIRT podcast. Justine, let's jump into it. Maybe share a little bit about yourself. And tell us about Justine, and then maybe tell us a little bit about how you came into your role at PITT OHIO Express.
Sure. So I am a two-time graduate of the University of Pittsburgh.
Hail to Pitt.
Yes, I have a degree in civil engineering and an MBA. And I've been with PITT OHIO. Oh my gosh, this will be my 29th year with PITT OHIO.
Wow, congratulations.
I know.
So you're coming up on a major milestone.
I am. It doesn't even feel real. It doesn't feel even close to that, nor do I feel that old.
Wow.
And so I've had a variety of roles at PITT OHIO. And after I got my MBA, I was working on sales analysis and marketing analysis, and I work in the sales department. So it's interesting. I got this degree in civil engineering. I always had an interest in the environment. I was working in our safety department, working on hazardous material. How do you transport that? I had this wide variety of experience, and I finished my degree, and I could not find the intersection between environmental engineering and business. And so I was like, I don't know what to do with myself. So I got an MBA and got really interested in data analysis. Love messing around with large amounts of data and trying to figure out insights from it. And then 10 years ago, in 2011, my boss, who's the Chief Marketing Officer and VP of Sales, Jeff Musick, he's like, Chuck wants us to have a core competency in sustainability. And
Chuck, maybe for the listeners,
is the owner and president of PITT OHIO. Great. Thank you.
Because we all know him as Chuck. So
we all know him as Chuck.
But just for folks listening, so Chuck Hamill, the CEO of PITT OHIO, right?
Yeah, and he tossed out this word sustainability, and no one knew what it meant. And Jeff, of the C-level exexecutives, he was the one tasked with it. And so
to look up the definition of what it meant?
To figure it out, what it meant to have a core competency in it. We didn't even understand it. And so we started with a carbon calculator. Like, what are our carbon emissions? And we did not know how to do that. So we partnered with Duquesne University professors, Dr. Robert Schroef and Professor John Mawhinney. And they came in and took an inventory. And the long route to this story is Jeff came to me because I was the analysis person. I mean, he had a bunch of salespeople and a bunch of marketing people.
Geek, right?
And I'm the nerd with all the data, and they needed help with Excel. And then all of a sudden, I was like, does this data mean what I think it means? And all of a sudden, I'm taking the carbon calculator, I'm making charts out of it, and I'm understanding the environmental impact of our business. And then I'm like, wow, this is what I wanted to do.
It was a moment of self-discovery.
It was really exciting for me. And so we decided that to form a steering committee because so much good work was happening in our operations and the drivers driving the trucks and how freight was getting loaded and our building maintenance team and our vehicle maintenance team. And we brought all these people together, and it really made sense because Chuck and everyone's vision was no one should own sustainability.
Mm-hmm.
Even me having a title, that took a long time to get sustainability, because once you have that title, then people are like, well, she's the sustainability.
Justine's going to do it, right?
Yeah, and it's really a company endeavor.
Mm-hmm.
So we got this steering committee together, and they were the same way. They were like, what is this? This is a buzzword.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't necessary. But what we found was everything we were doing up to that point was sustainable. To teach the drivers how to shift properly and how to brake properly to improve their miles per gallon. That's an efficiency.
Maybe take a step back for a second. Tell us a little bit about PITT OHIO. What
Yes.
is PITT OHIO? Like, we know it. A lot of us know it, I guess. It's kind of a household name in Pittsburgh. We see trucks driving around and are familiar with the brand. But tell us a little bit about the business that is PITT OHIO.
Yeah, so we move freight. So just like you get packages sent to your house, businesses, when they're shipping stuff back and forth, it's very B2B service provider. So our drivers will go out and make deliveries to businesses. And then when their truck's empty, they go and they make pickups and they return it back to the terminal. And then it all goes out, and it's, I think at this point, 85% next day.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really incredible what they move in a single night. And we do about 15,000 shipments a day right now, just in our less than truckload.
Wow.
So then we also have a full truckload operation. That's when you pick up an entire trailer and you move it to a single point. We have another division that's called ECM.
Okay.
And we also have a logistics group called Supply Chain.
Okay.
And they basically analyze any shipment pattern, and then they try to optimize it.
So what's two things, I guess. What's an example of some of the freight that you guys are hauling? And then what's the geography? Is it literally just Pennsylvania and Ohio, or Pittsburgh and Ohio, or?
Yeah, so PITT OHIO's core footprint are red trucks. Mm-hmm. They go from as far west as Chicago to the Eastern Shore.
Okay.
And then we go as far south as Richmond.
Okay.
So the Midwest, the Mid-Atlantic area. We have a sister company called Dorn. They are in the true Midwest, Nebraska, Missouri. And then we have another sister company called Ross that is up in New England. Mm-hmm. So we can really move the freight pretty far just between the partnership.
Okay.
Then we also partner with other like West Coast and Southern carriers. So really, if you had something to ship today and it was going to California, we'd be happy to pick it up.
Okay.
And make that happen for you.
And have like a relay station that where you're dropping it off in one place and they're taking the next 1,000 miles.
Exactly.
And is that equipment, or what are some of the B2B relationships?
Oh yeah, so it's anything really. It can be food, a lot of paint. We're
Really?
Pittsburgh town,
Okay.
so we've got PPG here. Yeah. Some chemicals. I mean, it's some industrial goods, but also some retail goods. We have a one customer. They service hotels, right? So it might be like little bottles of shampoo and things like that. So literally, if you walk across the dock, you could see almost anything other than like ammunition.
Okay. Yeah.
Right.
So you said this. Two questions here, I guess. What do you think kind of led to Chuck Hamel, your CEO, kind of his inquiry? Like, what was behind that? And then over the course of 10 years, what are some of the things that you've seen in terms of the growth of your sustainability program?
Yeah, I mean, if I could understand how Chuck is so visionary, I mean, that would be amazing. I mean, really, he just is way far ahead of the curve, and he just was seeing that at some point customers were going to want to come and want to work with a sustainable organization. I think the other piece of it is it's the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. And Chuck is very much about, how do I make this organization not only thrive for the company, kind of the profit aspect of it, but also for the employees, for the community.
Yeah.
He's really thinking about the big picture.
That's interesting. One of the things that when I think about PITT OHIO Express and the work that you've done, and I've been out to your campus up off of Route 910, I worked in the moving industry. We were talking about this before, and so I'm familiar with a warehouse, right? And how dingy and dirty they could be, and got things strewn over everywhere. But your warehouse is the cleanest warehouse that I have ever been in. And it's a large part because of your energy initiatives, right? Maybe talk about folks about some of that energy project up there in that campus and how that came about.
So I actually want to talk about two things, because you were talking a little bit about the 10-year history.
Sure.
So when that LEED certified building, like that, again, that was Chuck's vision.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, how do we take the best that's out there today and apply it to a trucking terminal? Nobody else was thinking like that.
Right.
And I told you, I've been with PITT OHIO for a really long time, and one of my jobs was safety.
Mm-hmm.
And I would go out to the old dock that used to be in Pittsburgh, like in the Strip District. We used to actually have the trucking terminal in the Strip District. And that thing, like, you could just smell the propane fumes.
Mm-hmm.
You could, there was dirt.
Right.
And not because, they weren't
just
careful.
How it was, right?
It's just how it was. It's just the nature of the building and the operation. So when they built this LEED certified building, and they really took into account so many new technologies, like the placement of the building to maximize daylight, the geothermal heating and cooling. Mm-hmm. And one of the things was the electric forklifts.
Mm-hmm.
And this is all before we even put a single solar panel on the building. They actually had done a little bit of analysis before the building opened to see if renewables would work, and it didn't.
Oh, really?
It's one of those things you have to think about. Not only is it a cool thing to do, but is it the right thing to do?
Mm-hmm.
And it just wasn't the right thing to do at the time.
It has to be functional, right?
But I'll tell you, this company, it's not just about Chuck, it's the people too. And our director of building maintenance, Jim Mogg, had been doing some research. He had learned a little bit about microgrids from a University of Pittsburgh professor, and went to Chuck and said, I'm interested in learning more about this. And Chuck was like, okay,
That's
let's
awesome.
try it. It's unheard of, that level of experimentation.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very much in the culture and in the nature of how we run the business to try to do things differently. And so they built this. The first thing they taught us was about direct current energy, and how you lose a little bit of efficiency every time you're transferring from direct to alternate.
Right.
The building had already been built, right? And the electricity had already been wired, right? So we had alternating current there. But we were learning about, okay, well, how do we redo this? Mm-hmm. What can we do? So what they wound up doing was putting in the One Wind Stacks wind turbine. Thank you, Ron Godovic.
Yeah, another local business.
And about 200 solar panels and a pretty small microgrid of about 70 kilowatts.
Okay.
And they were able to use that electricity for the electric forklifts, which were already completely cleaner and quieter, but now they're also not pulling from the grid.
And so they're all powered from that installation right there on site.
Originally they weren't.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, how does that, you talked about like your sustainability committee. That seems like it has a lot of different components that came into it. You mentioned safety, you mentioned the buildings team. How did that influence design, I guess, or the conceptualization of the project?
Team effort, just all the way. So I remember one of the first, we were having a sustainability meeting, and this was before Harmer I think it was while Harmer was being built, Pittsburgh terminal, but it's in Harmer. And they were talking about these electric forklifts and these charging stations and how much room they were going to take on the dock. And the operations team was very much like, what is this? I don't want to say they said they didn't want to do it, but they were very apprehensive, I guess is a polite way of saying it.
Right.
And concerned, because if I talked about how much freight is being moved every night, if you have one forklift go down and all of a sudden you've got somebody and they have to manually move that freight, that can make a big difference on whether that truck gets loaded and makes its cut time. So now it's impacting service.
Right.
And at the end of the day, our job is service. Right.
That's getting something from point A to point B. Right?
Yeah. Regardless of, all the sustainability stuff, we've got to, make the customer happy. And so it was really great to see after we went live, that people loved the electric forklifts.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as much as operations was concerned about it, they didn't die in the middle of the shift. They were completely quieter. We talked about cleaner, so
Right.
the tires are harder, so they don't shed that black soot you always see.
Yeah.
And so it wound up being a benefit, a point of pride actually for employees to feel like, hey, look at this place I work in. It's so much nicer than going to work somewhere else.
Yeah, that's amazing. Like, so the employee benefit component of that
Never
is huge.
thought of it, was never part of the original concept. And we went from having just one terminal with electric forklifts, and I think now we're up to 7.
Wow.
And now we're also looking at where can we put renewables to power those forklifts
To get the full loop.
to get the
effect.
full loop. Exactly. So I told you that director of building maintenance, Jim Mogg, he's got weather stations positioned and he's monitoring how much sunshine and how much wind to optimize the solar and the wind installation.
So he's becoming the data geek too now.
100%.
You know, behind all that though, and you touched on this earlier, is this idea that oftentimes in sustainability, it is perceived up front by many people that it's not good for business, right? That it's going to be a cost premium. It's going to require a whole host of additional work. I mean, you know a lot of the case examples. Why do you think that is? And what do you do in your position to kind of flip that script around a little bit?
Yeah. So again, we talked a little bit about my 10 years. I'm really like sitting on the hillside, like looking down at my history. But I remember
You're in the position to pontificate a little bit now.
Exactly.
And you got a microphone, so do it.
But I remember one of the first things we did, like after I think the first sustainability report was written, was we brought customers in, and we're like, because we do this normally twice a year. We bring in the customers and we ask them a variety of things. Again, I kind of wear the marketing hat as well there, and we asked them about sustainability, and not a single person in the room, they were all like, "That's nice for you, has no impact on me."
Right.
So I think because at the end of the day, it is, about how do I get my good to my customer, not just through their transportation, but like, how am I packaging it? How am I doing this? How am I doing that? But I think what people are seeing, and I think what's been so great, especially here in Pittsburgh, is the sharing of information and those wins about that efficiency. The story I'm telling about the electric forklifts, if someone can hear that and be like, well, maybe I should look into electric forklifts for my dock when I'm ready to make that capital investment.
Sure.
Well, that's great. Now all boats are rising. So I think it's really talking about sustainability as an engine for innovation, as opposed to here's a thing to do, or even worse, I put a web page up and it's green colored and we say we care and this is important to us, but then there's nothing to back it up as to what you're doing, that whole concept of greenwashing. So I think it's really, again, having my particular background, showing the value of it. There have been years when we've, published our report and it's like, miles per gallon didn't go down this year.
Right.
And we have to kind of look back and say, here's an opportunity. What else can we be doing?
What do you see there in that space? I mean, you just mentioned miles per gallon, which another one of the KPIs or key performance indicators that we're dealing with is total cost of ownership, which I'm sure in like the fleet space is something that you look at. Do you find it difficult to collect the data and then analyze it, or has that gotten easier for you in recent years?
It's gotten much easier. What Dr. Schroef and Professor Merwini put together, I still use today. The big thing was we added like this layer of a dashboard on top of it to quickly like show, okay, visually this is what's happening. But yeah, thank goodness for onboard computers. I mean, the onboard computers are not only great because it tells me the miles, tells me the gallons. We use it very much in our safety. We have predictive analytics to look at, okay, this person, is driving this way, or this person might have, certain, a citation that could be a precursor to something else.
Like a safety issue.
Yeah, a safety issue. So the data, thank goodness, is there, and it's relatively easy to get to.
And are you looking at that like on a trip-by-trip basis, or is there a monthly, quarterly?
That's a great question. So right now I pull just monthly. I just get the truck. I get this is what it did. Or for our electricity, here's the terminal. This is how many kilowatts they used or how many they generated if they have that. So what we're trying to do, so I get a monthly carbon number.
Okay.
And then we have something called a costing model, which helps us apportion basically cost per shipment per customer, but it's a model.
Okay.
It's not based on actuals. We say, on average, this customer ships this, and we spend this time moving this freight, and therefore we think it's this much. So we do the same thing with the carbon.
Okay.
We apportion it to each shipment. But
wow.
I'm working on something. And again, poor Chuck, he's been wanting this for a while, so I'm trying to get it done. But really looking at, hey, I can see this manifest. I can see how this driver drove. Now let me apportion the actuals.
Okay.
So I'm really excited we'll be able to give somebody a scope 3
carbon
carbon emission report.
For listeners, that's like the holy grail of data.
Yeah, and say,
data.
Here's what you shipped, here's how it moved, and here's the estimated carbon.
Wow.
So not there yet, but I'm working on it.
What do you see in terms of like the business impact then? So like you're undercutting the data, and we talked a little bit about some of these aspects, but like in that 10-year horizon, the company's grown and expanded. I mean, so there's obviously like those kind of markers. But in terms of the sustainability component, what are some of those big impacts that you've seen on the business side?
Definitely the renewables.
Yeah.
So I think I mentioned the microgrid in Harmer is pretty small, right? 70 kilowatts. So we're still connected to the grid. Extremely important. Like if the wind's not blowing or if it's night out, we need power regardless.
Right.
So that took our electricity usage down about a third.
Whoa.
So using the same concepts and with Ron Godovic really helping us engineer it, we just opened up a new facility in Cleveland that went from 70 kilowatt microgrid to a little less than 1 megawatt.
In terms of production?
In terms of storage. And production,
okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So we've got 8 wind stacks, wind turbines, and I think the last time I looked, it was about 1,600 solar panels.
Whoa.
The thing is completely net zero and is giving back to the grid with the idea that with all that excess energy, we'd like to use it to power trucks.
Okay.
The trucks aren't there yet. We have some sample trucks that we've been experimenting with.
I was going to ask that. What do you see in terms of the transportation industry? Are we going to see a battery electric future or hydrogen, or what is like the fuel of the future for trucking?
I mean, I know Nikola is the company building those hydrogen trucks. I haven't seen any on the road yet.
I was thinking you guys were going to be
talk
probably
about
the first.
Total cost of ownership. No, I think so. Again, kind of to backtrack again with the 10-year history, we invested in CNG, which is compressed natural gas. A tractor trailer is very different than a delivery van,
right?
In terms of the power that it needs, and then you attach a trailer, and 25,000 pounds of freight. I mean, it's just a different energy requirement. So the CNG trucks, I remember going through about 7 experimental trucks that our vehicle maintenance team, and they're full in. They will bring it in, they'll test it out, they'll put it in the operation, they'll learn all they can about it, and then give feedback to the manufacturer. So we finally found a CNG truck that worked in the operation. We have about 30 of them right now in operation. But the efficiency is really, while the carbon per gallon is lower, the efficiency is also lower.
Right.
So it winds up being a little bit of a wash. So I think it's those kinds of experiments.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I think what we were doing was kind of the idea of like, and I'm really going to date myself now, like this idea of Betamax versus VHS. We're
Right.
kind of skipping over and then going straight to Netflix. We're going to renewable energy off of our microgrid.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's super exciting.
it really is.
One of the pillars of of sustainability is the issues of social justice and diversity. Could you talk a little bit about how PITT OHIO Express has kind of approached that? You talked a lot about kind of your team and how everybody is included in a lot of the process, but how is that a pillar of your work with regards to the sustainability programming you're doing?
Yeah, I'm just going to frame it a little bit differently because I tell everyone I'm not an expert on
Sure.
the HR things that they are doing, and they are doing amazing work there. But what's exciting for me is that I see it very much as I saw sustainability 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
When people would hear the word sustainability, they'd be like, ugh, I made a face.
Right.
So,
Yeah, you can't tell to mask, but yeah, I felt it.
Yeah. I think the words inclusion and equity, it's a little bit of the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
that people are a little uncomfortable, but I think there's a tremendous opportunity for myself included to learn
Yeah.
and to understand what are we doing and understanding what are the things we could be doing differently, and again sharing that information with others so that all boats rise.
That's right.
I think we're in a really exciting point where we're talking about it,
Mm-hmm.
even though people feel maybe a little confused about it and what to do. And I think even forums like CEOs for Sustainability, my little Sustainable Pittsburgh plug, I'm really excited to see what's going to come about over the next few years.
That's terrific. You mentioned CEOs for Sustainability, and what do you see, I guess, is some of the next steps in terms of the sustainability practice here in Pittsburgh? Like, what are some of the things you'd like to see? The region kind of, we have a lot of these networks that are being formed, like CEOs for Sustainability, work being done in research and development. So really, kind of the panacea. What do you see coming up in the next couple of years that really excites you about sustainability in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, I still think that this idea of sharing information, because the technology is changing so quickly and not everyone can invest
Mm-hmm.
in every technology. So the best way to learn about it is to have that network of people where you can share information with and kind of cherry pick what's the best thing to do. So I know DMI, the metal company,
Mm-hmm.
they have the most amazing waste management program. And what they do, again, blue collar guys, fully in with all these different I mean, I think they're zero now. They're
Wow.
a zero waste facility.
Wow.
And really something we can all aspire to and learn from. I know we're not there yet. So,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think any organization has a perfect solution. And I think it's looking at the materiality of your organization
Mm-hmm.
and understanding what's going to be critical, and then going and continuing to share that expertise. So I'm so excited. I keep seeing CEOs growing.
Mm-hmm.
I talked a little bit about our customer base. I'm seeing the same thing. Luckily, I get an insight into our customers and a wide variety of customers, some European-based, some Fortune 500, some, local companies asking me for their emissions report, asking me to fill out something like an EcoVadis survey or things like that. So the interest is there, and I think it's just a matter of how does that grow? How does that continue to snowball?
That's really interesting. I mean, so from a business competitiveness standpoint, the work that you've done over the last 10 years, kind of laying the foundation, you're now seeing customers come back and asking you for that information.
Yeah, and Chuck's vision basically coming true.
Wow.
Which is why I'm so amazed at how he can think that far ahead.
And it's effectively, just to kind of clarify that, it's the customers asking, hey, PITT OHIO Express, are you doing this, this, and this.
What is your sustainability program? What are your initiatives? What are you doing? And by the way, what is your carbon report? What's your carbon footprint? And what's my carbon footprint when I ship with PITT OHIO?
Wow.
And so the fact that we've laid this foundation and we can answer those questions, I'm hoping is giving us a competitive advantage.
That's interesting because we did something similar recently at the city of Pittsburgh with an energy procurement. And one of the things that we asked as part of the RFP was that the respondent provide us with their CSR or an ESG, corporate social responsibility or environmental social governance profile. And, what happened was it created a separation. You had everybody that was in the space because they've dealt in that specific energy technology, but not everybody has gone that next step to kind of Chuck's vision, right?
Yep.
Of thinking about what's material to my business, how can it influence my customer, and quickly from our selection team, they were like, well, these 3 did and these 3 didn't, and so we were able to kind of create a competitive advantage for those.
Yeah.
Those companies were able to create a competitive advantage for themselves.
A few years ago, I had the privilege and pleasure of going to Iceland, and we were picking out our rental car. And on the rental car, it was cute. It was kind of like McDonald's, and they have the visual menu.
Yeah.
But the visual menu had the carbon estimate for each of the choices of cars.
Oh.
And I really thought, I think that was 4 years ago,
yeah.
5 years ago now. But I really was thinking, like,
labeling.
At some point, it will roll down. At some point, people are going to understand, like, I can save money by doing this. I can create efficiencies in my organization, and I can make the world a better place.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a matter of figuring out who has that advantage, and then other people kind of copying it.
That's terrific. Well, with that, we'll leave it with those words of wisdom. Justine, it's been absolutely terrific talking with you and kind of sharing your expertise and stories. So thanks so much for taking time and sharing this experiences with us. So here's hoping the next 10 years will be full of progress as well. So that wraps up this episode of the DIRT Podcast from the Center for Media Innovation here at Point Park Studios. We want to thank everyone for listening and watching in at home, and we'll catch you out next time here on the DIRT. So thanks, Justine, and thanks everyone for listening in. I'm Grant Ervin. I'm your host here on the DIRT Podcast. Thanks for being with us. Take care.